But first, tonight, to our economy and the rising cost of living. News reports this weekend that families are working 4 jobs just to make ends meet. The Nine newspapers report that according to the ABS, a record number of Australians, 900,000, have multiple jobs. While a survey this year by comparison site Finder.com revealed that 1 in 4 workers, about 4.8 million people, 4.8 million, have a side hustle or is working longer hours or has even come out of retirement to meet soaring costs. The Nine papers told the story of Gemma Bates-Smith, a teacher's aide, and her husband Tristan, who's a support worker. They both each now have had to take up second jobs as DoorDash food delivery drivers at night after their children are asleep. Each night, they take a turn. They had to get these second jobs when their fixed mortgage expired and they couldn't survive paying the mortgage with the higher cash rate and groceries on their incomes alone. Gemma told the paper that some nights they turn it into a family date and drive their boys, aged just 2 and 9 months old, around in their pyjamas. This is the new reality for Middle Australia. Middle-income earners who wouldn't previously have been in hardship, now struggling to buy groceries, literally to feed their kids and put a roof over their heads. This cost of living crisis is reaching breaking point for many average families. Power bills are rising yet again, many as much as 20 or 25% this winter. Petrol prices are now around $1.70 a litre. Interest rates have risen 12 times in a year and a half, and fruit and vegetable costs have skyrocketed by 9.9%. Meanwhile, housing supply is getting tighter, and the lack of supply is leading to higher rents, while Labor's immigration push is also putting the pressure on housing supply. But it's this turbocharged migration that's the only thing preventing our economy from plunging into recession. That's according to a report in the Australian newspaper Today.
For people on the lowest incomes, they are really struggling. People are going without food and the essentials of life. It is really crushing for people. For people on the lowest incomes, they cannot deal with this cost of living crisis on their own, and we need governments to step up and to intervene in the right ways to get on top of these price increases.
And the Oz reported new modelling by KPMG that shows that if annual growth drops into negative territory, unemployment could rise to 4.2% this year, 4.6% next year, which the RBA has already predicted, and then 5% in early 2025. And this would mean an extra 200,000 people unemployed, 200,000 people losing their jobs in less than 2 years. And already families are struggling, and many are struggling to find a place to live, particularly if they're renting. The weekend Courier Mail reported that some renters in Queensland have applied for hundreds and hundreds of rental properties. One person applied for 800 rental properties, and there's just no stock available.
In 10 years in the industry, I've never seen it this tight.
Spend most of your nights crying because you just don't know where you're going to be the next day.
Queensland is in the midst of a housing crisis where the competition to find a home is fierce.
Enjoy each other way out. Hello.
For the first time, agents are capping the number of people they allow to attend inspections. Some desperate renters can't even get through the door to view a home.
We gave up after applying for over 800 places and being rejected for all of them. A lot of them wouldn't even respond to the applications.
Thank you.
How many have you applied for?
About 50 or more. Yeah, it's a bit deflating.
Now, this isn't all Labor's fault, and no one is pretending inflation isn't a global problem sparked by supply chain issues from the COVID lockdowns and also, of course, the war in Ukraine. But Labor did mislead voters when Albanese repeatedly promised that life would be more affordable and cost of living would be easier under their government.
Well, what you can do is have a plan to address cost of living issues. And that's why we've put forward practical plans, ones that'll make a difference for working families. Yes, Sarah, the problem with what Scott just said is that the cost of living measures that he spoke about are all temporary. They have all the sincerity of a fake tan. They disappear once people have cast their vote, and then people are back on their own again.
Albanese should have known that his cost of living pledge was going to be a broken promise the moment the words passed his lips. Because there was already one interest rate rise during the election campaign. It was clear at that point in time that inflation was a serious issue. And since then, as you well know, we've had 11 more rate rises. And we'll find out tomorrow if there's yet another. There's hope that with inflation looking like it could be starting to get under control, that the RBA may pause. But there's an argument over how much inflation is actually falling by. The opposition claims the underlying figure barely fell at all, from 6.5% to 6.4%. The Financial Review's political editor Phil Curry told me it's this figure, the underlying inflation, that the RBA examines.
Well, let's look at the underlying rate, which has gone from 6.5 to 6.4. That's hardly a spectacular reduction. And of course, these are monthly figures. The quarterly number's at 7%. And we'll see where the next quarterly number comes out, which is the more reliable, longer-term number. These monthly numbers are new. This is a new data series. But the underlying has barely moved.
The underlying inflation, the one without the volatility, petrol prices and these sort of one-off things that can have a sort of distortive impact on inflation but aren't enduring. Yeah. That's not included in the 6.4 figure. That's the one the Reserve Bank pays more attention to than the headline number.
Now, don't forget the Albanese government has committed to a crackdown on misinformation. Well, under the Act, misinformation is defined as information that's false, misleading or deceptive. So there might be questions about whether Albanese himself is guilty of misinformation when he promised repeatedly that life would be more affordable under his government.
Misinformation.
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 The misinformation which is there.
Some misinformation.
Spread misinformation.